Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Baker Tilly webinar. Before we begin, we'll cover a few housekeeping items. To the right of your screen, there are multiple application engagement tools you can use. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can submit them through the Q&A engagement tool. Next to the Q&A application is the polling section. Here, a pop-up screen will appear with a question. Please select your answer and click Submit. Once you submit your answer, the polling question will close. To find additional session documents, click Resources. Here you can find session-related content to download such as the PowerPoint slides, relevant documents, and more. After the webinar concludes, you will receive an email with a link to watch the recording. Lastly, don't forget to take the post-event survey. This will be available on your engagement panel to the right of your screen shortly before the webinar concludes. Our team greatly appreciates your feedback, and we use it to guide future content development. Now let's pass it over to today's speakers.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Baron, and welcome to our Baker Tilly product webinar. Today, we're going to talk through some of the very impactful tools that we see within our home services vertical and how to get the most out of those technology that's available to you. So let's go ahead and get kicked off. Today, we'll have a great lineup of presenters. It'll be us five. Baron Sonmez here. I head up our home and commercial services vertical. Been with the firm for 13 years now, and I'll be joined by Nick and Sammy from our professional services team, and Tim and Tom from the product side. And we're excited to share with you some functionality that we're going to talk through. Quick agenda here. I'll kick us off with a quick overview of the supplier statement module and share some customer success stories. I know it's a relatively new module compared to home and commercial services, so want to make sure everyone is aware of what that module does and the functionality before we dive deeper. And then Tim will take on and go more into the details of SSM and specifically how we leverage the PDF workflow. And then Sammy will share with us some of the newer features that we rolled out on SSM, including national accounts, which was a very hot topic from our big PE customers. And then we'll pass on to Nick to talk through some of the home and commercial services module updates. We haven't had a major release in the last 6 months for HCSM, but there has been some new features that we roll out in off-cycle releases that we think will be pretty beneficial for everyone to be aware of. And then Tom will bring us home with advanced approvals and how we see our home services customers leverage that module. And then we'll close out with the Q&A, but please feel free to throw in your questions throughout the presentation so that we can take them as it's applicable in the topics that we're covering. And one thing I'll also plug in before we jump into the content is all the tools that we developed for home services customers are directly based off of feedback that we get from y'all. So we really appreciate the feedback. If you're actively using any of our products, please feel free to reach out to us because all the new features that we roll out come directly from you. So with that, I'll get us kicked off with the supplier statement module. So supplier statement module at a very high level, this is to help automate workflows related to your big suppliers, right? Think of Johnstone, Lennox, Home Depot, where you will receive statements from them that will have thousands of transactions on it. And then our purchasing and AP teams then have to grab those statements and process each transaction one by one. So what we built is a module that automates that process, and you can receive those supplier statements and then leverage our module to first reconcile to what's in the system versus what's in the statement, then leverage it for conversions if you're using the two-step process with receivers. And then after the purchasing piece is complete, you can jump into the AP process, just again leveraging the statement to initiate payments, apply credits, and at the end send like a vendor-friendly remittance to your suppliers. And Tim will cover these all in detail, but that's a kind of 4-step process that we built in. And I would say probably purchasing an AP has been the area that I've gotten the most feedback over the years that really needed some automation in the system, and we believe this will save our customers tons of time. And we've been seeing great results from our customers, and some of the kind of success stories I'll share. One of our early adopters, TurnPoint Services, who've been using the product for a little bit now, um, you know, they really transformed how they process their AP processes, right? Instead of transacting one by one, looking at transactions one by one, they now leverage our SSM module to, automate their full purchasing workflows. So it was a big success story for them. And then we took a lot of their initial feedback and improved our product with new features as well. And another one, Heartland Home Services. This was a quote after they adopted, one of the features in our SSM module, which was around conversions. And just after adopting that feature, they were able to save, over 30 hours a month on the receiver automation process. So we're seeing really tangible outcomes from our customers that are adopting the SSM product. And with that, I'll pass it on to Tim so that he can get into more of the details.
Sure. Thank you, Baron. Hello. For this portion of the webinar, I would like to review the workflow within Supplier Statement module and show how it addresses those time-consuming activities when working with high-volume vendors. As Baron mentioned, we essentially want you to drop the highlighter or drop the VLOOKUP spreadsheet and save a lot of time with this module. Within the Supplier Statement module, we can take the vendor's printed PDF statement, we can convert it to a standardized transaction list, compare this list to outstanding and recently paid bills, as well as purchasing transactions, also known as receivers, assist you with addressing the discrepancies via our edit and reporting options that enable you to focus specifically on these, as well as suggest possible matches. We then can automatically convert purchasing transactions to vendor bills that match records in the statement. We can issue payments on the statement for your matched transactions. And finally, we issue custom remittance statements that communicate the details of what was paid in Excel format for easy application for your vendors. The three actions highlighted in blue are features within Supplier Statement module that can be utilized directly across all your vendors without requiring a reconciled statements. These include converting purchasing transactions, creating payments and automatically applying credits, and custom remittance statement emails. So though the focus of this module is centered around the supplier statement, we have developed tools that generally help with the payables processes overall. All this without the smell of the highlighter. So that is the summary. Let's walk through the process. So we're going to start off with a PDF statement from Acme Supplies. And basically, I looked to create a large statement with a lot of transactions that we could go through here. Bills and credits, all identified with invoice numbers and purchase order numbers and the amounts. So to get started with this statement, I would bring up Supplier Statement module. Even though I'm in top level, I can specify any location where I have permission. So I'm saying this statement is working with this vendor is working with us in Entity 100. So I'll select that location, and then it'll tell me what vendors have I used in this location already. And so I could drop down the list, I find Acme Supplies and select it. If you're starting with a new vendor, you just select new vendor and do an alphabetical search, and then add that to this location to use going forward. Now that I've specified which vendor, I would import a new statement. And this brings up our import screen. Basically, you start here by specifying the vendor statement ID, something unique that identifies this statement. Since this is an October statement, let's say I'll do a date marker here that would tell me immediately what the end date is for the statement. This is a little repetitive, but I'll specify the date here, but this is more of when I'm searching for statements, like if I wanted to find my statements that were dated in October. Statement amount, if I was to use a CSV file, and I want to validate the transactions I'm importing, I could specify an amount here, and it would give me a warning message of whether I match the amount or not. But this is totally optional. And then we have the box where I can click in the box and uh, select the statement I want to import, or I can simply drag and drop like I'll do here and bring my PDF statement over into the box for import. The next section, the column headings, this is specifically for CSV statements because you can have different formats of the CSV file that you want to bring in statement information. And basically you tell me where we're going to find the data. So in this example, if for the date of the bill, what's the column heading where I would find that information? In this example, I have invoice date would be the column heading. Notice it did populate these from the last time I used this vendor. So all these vendor settings are memorized automatically. So once you get things working for your vendor, you don't have to worry about resetting these or making any changes. And further, I get the invoice number from a bill number column, purchase order from a description column, and you specify one or two amount columns that we need to refer to, and whether I need to transpose the number. Sometimes credits are showing up in a second column and they show positive. I need to transpose them to negative. I can do that simply here. The data translation is a way to take the invoice number or purchase order number from the statement and translate it to look like the invoice number or a purchasing transaction number you have in Intact. As you saw in our statement example here, I've got INV dash in front of my invoice number, but I'm not putting that in on all the bills numbers in Intact. So I want to capture the data after the INV dash. So this will identify here if there's any characters I want to remove after the number, and then I can also add characters before and after as well once I make that translation. So you can do this for the bill number, you can do this for the purchase order number, and last, if you have a statement where there's lines that show when you've made payments to the vendor and you want to skip those lines, you can identify the characters that we would look for to know this is a line to skip. So here I did payment. Once you have all this set up, and then you just basically click import, then we're taking the data file, we're converting it to transactions, we're matching it to your transactions. Oh, take that out, and go into the process. And what I did earlier, once it goes through all that matching, it sends me the vendor statement report. So here's a copy of the email, and it says, okay, we have done all the conversion and matching and built the report, and here's a report of all the data we brought in. It identifies the vendor and the statement ID that you can search for in your emails and quickly find it, and then the statement status, and then the spreadsheet that's attached to the email will give you the list of all the transactions it brought in from the statement and the matching results. So the left four columns are related to what we got from the statement, the date, the bill number, the purchase number, and the amount. And then if we matched it to a transaction, we matched it to a bill, we matched it to a purchase transaction, it would be identified in this column. If it's not matched and we have a suggestion, it would also be identified in this column, as well as the status for each line statement. So this process I ran earlier, it takes a few minutes to run, so I didn't want that to consume time at this time. So let's just go ahead and bring that statement I did earlier. So I did the location, I've got Acme Supplies, and I'm going to select the statement that I imported earlier. So to get the identify the statement, it brings up the statement action screen. After you import a statement, usually the first thing you want to do is go and edit the transactions. So I'm going to click edit the transactions. It brings up the edit screen and start showing the transactions. I can expand this to show me more transactions. And as you see, a lot of the transactions are matched. We have a few that are paid. They were previously paid recently, so it's identified those as well. And we have some unmatched transactions. But you know what? Instead of scrolling through all of these and identifying what I need to do, I can do a quick filter and say, just show me the unmatched transactions. And then boom, we're focused on 13 of the transactions out of 376 entries. So these were the ones we were unable to match. in 6 of these, we have a suggestion for you. So we think this is a match, maybe the date matched the amount, or maybe the ID matched and not the amount. In case I want to find out what it was, I can highlight the token here and say, oh, the amount does not match. So I can open up the bill, take a look at it, see why the amount doesn't match the amount of the statement, address it, make any changes to the bill, and save it. In any of these two, I can always accept the suggestion automatically. I can click the check mark and it disappears because now it's a match transaction. Now I've got 12 left to work on. If I want to edit a particular field and say, okay, I know this is matching this bill and I want to save it, then, okay, now it's a match transaction. And now I have fewer to work on. And maybe there's a transaction here that, oh, I've already talked to the vendor about this. This is not a bill that we're paying, and you can select it and delete it, and then it would highlight it. So I can make changes within the edit screen, and then when you're done and you're fixing to save it, okay, I'm updating a couple of lines, I'm deleting a line, and it goes through the validation and saves all my changes. So that's part of a way to enable you to quickly address the discrepancies on the statement. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out and go back to the statement action screen. And this is when we initially imported, we went through this matching process to see what we can match right away. But I can always go and rematch. So if I went and changed bills, changed the amounts, or I changed the bill ID to match the statement, and then, okay, now that I made those changes, match those unmatched transactions again, our system will find them, match them up, and then there'll be fewer transactions unmatched.
And Tim, just to jump in, the most common case there would be if you had transactions, for instance, from ServiceTitan that has not yet synced over because it was either, errored out or bypassed, and the team went and make those changes there and sync those transactions to Intacct. That will be another common scenario for you to, clear those unmatched transactions because they were stuck as part of the batch and export process.
Exactly. Yes. That's a good point. Thank you. So yeah, and then would it be available and you would match it after you've identified those missed from ServiceTitan. And here it shows that I've matched 67 purchasing transactions out of the 300 or so bills in the statement. I want to convert those automatically to bills. I can select this, and then will kick off that process to do those conversions in the background to automatically change that. After I've done this thing, if I want to go ahead and send payment for everything that I have been able to match, I can select this and say, okay, I want to pay my matched unpaid transactions, take any discounts that are available, and give it your bank account, give it your payment method, and it will create the payment and submit that payment through your normal approval processes as part of the statement action. And then last but not least is sending the report. This is the report we got when we initially imported the statement, the full transaction listing. But maybe at this point, I just want a list of the unmatched transactions. And that way I could just forward this email to my vendor and say, hey, these are possibly some bills that I need sent to me because they were missing in our system. So it's another quick way to resolve what your discrepancies are. And then you just start the process once you've made all those selections. Everything I've shown so far is going through one statement at a time. I'm sorry. And now we're talking about the remittance. After you do the payments and everything, we can do the remittance. I can select the vendor and then give it a date range of, okay, when did the payment take place, and run the report. This would send me a copy of the remittance email that would be sent to the vendor. If I want to send it directly to the vendor, all I have to do is check this checkbox. The remittance email is very similar to an ACH remittance that Intacct sends now within the email body. It identifies all the payment date, the payment number, if you had a check number here, amount, method. You have a custom email address that it can be referred to, and sends it all. But the remittance detail is coming over in Excel. So that's different, not in the PDF format. And then this would be an example of the information you receive. You have the date, the bill number, reference and description from within the bill. And here we've also have another customization where we can show information related to any bill detail items. So in this case, we used a project name as an example. If a bill detail is coded to a specific project and we reach through that project to find out the name of the project, we can list the project name within the remittance information here if that is helpful with your vendor to see that information. And then the discount and amount. Yeah, all this has been related to dealing with one statement at a time. If you want to work with multiple statements, I can give a certain date range, um, list, and location, particular statement status, list it, grab those statements below, and then I can do statement actions across statements. So here I've got like 4 different statements, and they all have match transactions. Hey, go ahead and try it again to see if I clear any more of those. And if there's anything left over, send me reports for all 4 statements of just what's unmatched so I can work on addressing them. Do all these multiple statement selections and submit the selected action. So I went through all this really quick. If you have any questions on this process, uh, update the Q&A and we'll try to address them.
Yeah, Tim, there were actually 2 things that popped up on the Q&A I'll kind of ask. One is if you want to go back a couple screens to the couple tabs to the left, maybe the supplier statement tab, the left one. Yeah. So on this, we're looking at the payment methods. What are the current available options there? Is it just the standard AP payment methods?
Yes, we have those 4 standard methods. We are familiar that a lot of people are moving towards MineralTree as a payment service, and we'll be looking to add that shortly. But beyond that is our methods that we're using.
Got it. And then the second one was related to multi-location, right? Because we know we have some of these centralized accounting teams that are trying to process at the top level. Can we process statements across multiple locations?
Yes, we have built this whole supplier statement module to try to be entity independent. So you could do just about everything from top level across your multiple entities. Maybe one thing is you got to get into configurations at an entity level to set some certain parameters up, but definitely not any daily activities as you use this tool.
Got it. And one last thing I'll add to that last piece of the remittance piece. That was a direct feedback from one of our PBAC customers, because they've run into so many issues with suppliers on disputes on what's paid, what's not paid, and that created so much confusion and back and forth, and in some cases stop work from the suppliers because they're like, these are outstanding bills in our system. So we've definitely built that in to streamline that communication, because Intacct natively doesn't do a great job when credits are involved on paying bills. So in instances where transactions might be shown as paid, the supplier might never have received the validation that those bills were paid, because they were paid with discounts and credits and things in that nature without an actual payment being issued. So this was a pretty high level request from one of our customers after we rolled out the initial version of supplier statement, is to add that remittance piece that can go as a vendor friendly report.
Definitely.
Awesome. I don't have any other questions, so those were the 2.
Okay. I think it's time for a poll question.
Perfect. And we can move it along, and we can pass it on to Sammy for some of the newer features that we rolled out on SSM. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Perfect. Well, let's jump in then. So first one up is national accounts. So now we have the capability in supplier statement module to set up a national vendor at the top level, and then you attach child vendors from the entity levels. And this allows you to create consolidated bills and payments to one vendor at the top level for all those child vendors that exist at the entity level. What the integration will do is it will create adjustments to post to those child vendors and those child bills, we'll call them, to mark them as quote unquote paid. And then it'll create consolidated bills at the top level to allow you to pay all of your child vendors at the top level. And then the remittance is going to include all those bills and adjustments in one statement just for ease when sending to the vendor.
Yeah, and one thing I'll toss in there too, this was another direct feedback that we've gotten from some of our early adopters of the product, earlier in this year, is the fact that from a business case standpoint, being able to work with, suppliers like Johnstone and Lennox to have a national account level relationship with them, so that you're not worrying about issuing 50, 100 plus payments to different Lennox or Johnstone locations, and instead maintain that payable at a national account level. And obviously that needs to be an agreement in place with the suppliers first before potentially leveraging this workflow, but it really even streamlines it more for our AP team, so that you don't have to issue all those separate payments to specific locations of those suppliers, and instead send the payment to the your national account level. And from a process standpoint, if you're familiar with the customer merge feature of HCSM, it's pretty similar to that, where we consolidate the balances of the child level vendors that are sitting at the entity and combining it to the top. But yeah, this was like another pretty high ticket item for some of our bigger customers on a functionality that they want to see. But go ahead, Sammy.
Perfect, thank you. And next, other new item that I'll touch on here are any entity level variance setup. So when it comes to conversion threshold variances, you can now set up those to be individual per entity. So you would update the configuration at the entity level versus the top level, so you could make them different amongst each entity.
Yeah, and this one, Tim, I don't think Tim touched on it, so I can maybe quickly touch on that too. As part of our conversion process on the supplier statement module, you can mark a variance threshold for us to disregard any immaterial variances of your transactions, so that that doesn't end up getting flagged by supplier statement module as a variance for you to reconcile and correct. So that can be a percentage or a dollar amount. So you can set that up so that as part of the receiver conversion process, we can disregard any immaterial variances like dollar differences, rounding errors, etc. That can be disregarded. So we're now expanding that functionality to be at the entity level.
Perfect. And next, I'll jump into a demo. I'm not going to demo the entity level variance, but I am going to demo the national vendors. Alrighty. So first, looking at the top level here, I set up this vendor right here at the top level. If I hide the private ones, you can see this is a top level vendor. So that's the first step, is set up that vendor at the top level. All the child vendors will be set up already at the entity level. So I have all those created. And then what we'll do is we will slide into the supplier statement module and the national accounts over here. You would put that vendor ID of this top level vendor that I mentioned over here in this ID field. You would run it. That's going to set it up as that national vendor account. You have to do that first. That's step number one. When you do that, it's going to make it so that you can see this type ID over here. So you can clearly see that this is a national vendor. Makes it very easy, very obvious to see exactly what's going on there. Step number two is then to create the child vendors. We have to link those vendors to this top level national vendor. So I would select my vendor from this drop down after I did this first step. put the idea of those child vendors in here, do one at a time, and then I can put a remittance reference in here. So if I have a specific location name I want to show on that reference, I can put it in there. I think in my example, I have Boston. I have a Boston location in there, so I could put Boston in there, kind of whatever's going to work best. And then you would run each of those. Once that's complete, when you're at the top level, you can see that these are all linked now as child vendors under that national vendor. And that's what we need to see. I can see over here, these are under different entities. And then this is my top level one. So you would do all of those steps. And then sliding into the entity levels over here, there's bills that are created to those child vendors. So you would still create the bills at the entity level as you typically do and set them up like normal. And I have 2 of them over here in a different entity as well. So there's 3 different bills that I'm going to be consolidating at the top level for 3 different vendors. So the last step is to come over here and actually consolidate those bills over. So I would select my vendor that I want to do the consolidation for, and I pick my through date. It's going to default to today. My bills are dated for today, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then I actually click the run button. And when I do this, it's going to create all those bills at the top level now under my national vendor, and then it's going to create those adjustments on the back end to essentially zero out the child vendor invoices at the entity level. Now, the adjustments do take a little extra time to show, so they're not going to show in here immediately, but I did run this tool dated October 1st so that I can show you that process. So we can see the consolidation process is fully completed. So if I go to my AP bills over here at the top level, we are going to see those consolidated invoices. You can see there's quite a few in here. The ones dated 11/20, these were the ones I just did. And they are noted as a consolidated invoice. So this would allow me to pay essentially 3 bills that are in 2 different entities, all at the top level. Really simplify that process when it comes to cutting that check because it only needs to go to the same vendor anyway. So for bills that were previously run, you can see I have some dated 10/1 that I did this consolidation process on as well. These were the original bills, these bottom 2 right here, and you can see they're marked as paid. So what the back end process does is it creates adjustments, applies it to those bills. I didn't have to do any application process. It's marked as paid via that adjustment. And if I come over here in my AP adjustments, I can see those adjustments sitting right there. So the adjustments do take a little bit longer to show. They will show in there, though I promise within the day, but those do take a bit of time. And that's essentially the whole process. Saves you a lot of time. Consolidating all those bills at the top level makes it easier when it comes to paying those bills. Okay. Now I believe Nick is up.
Hello, everybody. As Baron and Sammy mentioned, I'm Nick Watkins. I'm a senior manager on our implementation team. I wanted to thank everybody again for joining us today. For my portion of today's presentation, I'd like to run through a few features that we recently added to the Home and Commercial Services module over the past few months. So I'll kind of jump right into it here. The first tool utility that we added that I wanted to present on today was our deposit merchant fees functionality. Typically, merchant fees are mixed in with cash deposits in the same GL account via the deposit module, which made it hard for customers to see those fees clearly and required a manual journal entry at the end of the month, which was fine. But recently, with the addition of Adyen to ServiceTitan, clients need a way to capture fees on a per deposit basis rather than just once a month, which would require a lot of journal entry work and manual work to capture those things and put them in a fee account. With the new Baker Tilly release recently, we can now assign a separate GL account for merchant service fees on a transaction basis. Using the deposit screen. I'll show in a couple minutes, there's a couple fields that were added. This lets us track these fees independently from cash and improves clarity and reporting accuracy without requiring a manual journal entry every time a deposit is made. So here I have a few screenshots, and I will kind of walk through each of them as I go, beginning with how to set this up. So it's a functionality that's available to anybody that's subscribed to Home Service Module. To turn on the automation, you would essentially you would navigate to the Home Services menu and go, if you have the correct permissions, which would be Home Service admin users, you would navigate to config at the top. Once you're on the config screen, you'll see in the middle where it says configuration, there's two new fields on the middle left of the page. There is a merchant GL account, merchant fee account, which is essentially selecting a GL account, and then a default department that you would like to use for these. You have the option to set a default department or leave it blank if you don't want a department to be tagged. I tagged a 6,000 account, which would be below the line on the P&L, but you could code this to a 5,000 account if you wanted to go to more of a COGS location on the P&L. So that's how you would select those two fields and defaults and hit save. Once those are saved, that's really all the setup that's required. Then to use the functionality in my final screenshot at the bottom, it's added fields and data information to the deposit screen. So as you're creating deposits, you would select your line items or import a file that are included in that deposit, and then type in what the fee is here. And when you post it, it will make in the journal entry, it will separate out the merchant fees from the cash deposit to the account that's defaulted above and department if you selected a department. So now what I can do is kind of show this in the UI just so everybody sees it more clearly than what's here. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here. So to begin with, as I mentioned, I went to Home Services and Config. And once you're on the screen, there's these two new fields here. I selected the 6 account and a default. You can leave this blank. So that's the first step. And then you would hit save. And now the defaults are saved. On the next screen, I have the deposit screen shared. I've already loaded the screen. You would obviously hit view first up here, and all the line items would come. So I've selected my line items down here. And then you can see I've entered a merchant fee of $100. And so I have total selected lines and net deposit, which means the net would go to the difference, right? It would go to that merchant fee account that I had on the previous screen. And then you would just hit process deposit like any other day. And then on my third screen here, I have an example of what it's going to do in the journal entry. So you can see this is a different deposit than what I was sharing on that screen. This was an $800 deposit. So I'm taking $800 out of undeposited funds, or sorry, this should be undeposited funds. And I'm putting it into the checking account, and then $50 is going to the merchant services fees account. So instead of this just being 2 lines, 800, 800, now what I've typed into this field on this previous screen is split out on its own line and going to that default account that I had showed on the previous screen. And I had it set to department services. You can select whichever department you want or leave it blank, and it will look like this first line where there's no department tag.
Hey, Nick, I got a question on the chat. I'll pose it. This is only applicable, I guess, if people are using Adyen. Like if for TSYS, it's just business as usual.
Correct. This is for people, for customers that have a payment processor that requires a fee on a deposit basis, not on a month basis.
Great, thanks.
I'll go ahead and stop sharing. I'll go back to the deck. So the second feature that I wanted to cover today is what we're calling our user report. This has been out for some time, but I want to make sure that we get awareness of it and people start to use it even more. Um, the use case is that previously, if an admin needed to understand a user's access, they had to open each user's account individually, dig through their permissions, see which entities they had permissions to, and it was a very slow and tedious process, which made it tough for some of our PE firms to get a clear picture across the entire organization of what user can do what and in what entity, right? So what we did was we created a report that you can, we created a report called the user restriction report. And instead of checking the users one by one, you can generate an Excel file that gets emailed to you. And it shows the permissions and entities that each user has. And that's good for, if you have some audit stuff going on, or if you just need insight into what people have just as an internal audit. And you have flexibility in the way that you can run it. You can run it based on active users, inactive users, or just pull everyone at once. Overall, it's just faster and easier to manage access. So I have the instructions on how to run the report here. The caveat is you must have the permissions assigned to see this. So if you were to log into Intacct and you navigate to the home services menu and you don't see user restriction report, that means your permissions need to be updated. But the 2 clicks are really easy. It's home services, user restriction report. And then on the right, you can see it's really just picking the user type or user status, whether it's active, inactive, or all, and then just clicking generate report.
Yeah, Nick, that's a pretty good call out. Just to jump in there too, because I get this so often from our users is like, oh, you mentioned that this functionality has been up for a while, but I haven't seen it in my menu. So, we really want to make sure that especially the kind of your power users or system admins are keeping up with the new updates, because whenever we release new features, like customer merge, for instance, that's a new permission line that appears in your roles. So you wouldn't automatically be enrolled to see these new features that are being rolled out. So it's really important to make sure your system admin gives you access, right? And if you're the system admin, make sure to kind of keep up with those updates. And if you're not the system admin and you see some features within Home Services module that you think would be beneficial for you to use, just let the admin know so that they can give you access. But it's a good call out that you might not see the same options that Nick's displaying here on the screenshot, and that will be because of setup and permissions.
Thanks, Ben. So again, I'll just do a quick demo just so everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about. I'll share my screen one more time, and then I can turn it over to Tom. So you'll notice previously I was working in the entity when discussing deposits. It's really dependent on your company's setup. But for this user restriction report, you will run this at the top level. That's the goal of the entire thing is clarity from the top level. And it's simply just home services and then user restriction report right here in the middle. And the screen that will come up, I could just load it. All right, have it in the background. Is this, and it's just simply active, inactive, all, and then generate user restriction report. And it's what it does is you can see it triggers an offline process and sends an Excel report to your email. And what it will look like is this, where you can see I have each user sort of listed out. And then we have the entity that they're restricted to, which if it was multiple, it would list multiple. And then same thing, which permissions they have, which role set they have. And if they had multiple roles, there would be multiple rows. Sorry, I missaid that. It will do it like this, where it's comma. Sorry. But this is a sample of it. So it will export and look just like this.
Yeah, and one thing that we just added to this report as well, because some of our users were customers were using it to just audit the user's usage. So we will have that last login field updated as well, the column J, so that you'll be able to see if you have some inactive users, right, that haven't used the system in 3 months, that maybe no longer with the firm, or don't need access to Intacct anymore. So that activation, deactivation, and last login also will give you those 3 columns, kind of a way to audit your users throughout the month, throughout the quarter, instead of waiting for the renewal to figure out how many users are actively using the system. Awesome. Yeah, it doesn't look like we have any other questions on that one, Nick, so we can pass it to Tom.
Yep, pass it to Tom.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about our advanced approvals application here and the objects available to it. We'll start there. That's usually our first question. So advanced approvals is an add-on module written on the Intacct platform. It, as the name implies, has a custom approvals function built into it that goes beyond what Intacct does natively. And so here you see what we have: our customer, vendor, contact, entity, user, the contracts, and then for transactions, journal entry, stat entries, bills, payments, purchasing, order entry, purchasing and order entry with different approval rules for each transaction definition, and then bank reconciliations. And coming soon, project contract, change order, change request. Those are the construction module related objects. Okay, so from here, I'm going to share my screen. And please hold, because it's taking a little longer than it did in rehearsal. All right, so on my screen here, we're going to walk through a little bit of the advanced approvals module. We'll start with what the user experience is. So on the user experience side, there's 2 components. There's the one person that's doing the data entry, and then you got the other person that has to do the approvals. So we'll start with the data entry side. We're on vendor, this vendor being one of our objects that's available for approvals. And you'll see here, if we scroll through here, on the first tab, everything looks exactly the same. So we don't have any changes there. On the second tab, we scroll through there, everything's the same. So from the data entry standpoint, there's really not any differences. The only thing is up on the top, we have a fancy new button for submit for approval. So you click on that, it'll put in the approval queue, and that will then initiate the approval process. One other thing before I forget, we also have an approval audit trail. So for anything where you decide to activate the advanced approvals module, you will get an audit trail associated with it. We click on this. You can see that I approved it, submitted it. Next couple of people approved it. That was status of partial approved. And when the last person approves it, it goes to fully approved. And so you got a specific audit trail just for the approval process, which is different than the other audit trail. Now, in this case, also, it's a simplified one because just trying to make it look pretty for a demo. But if you had a submit for approval and then a recall and then submit again, and maybe somebody rejected it, all of that would be in the audit trail also. Okay, so that's the first half of it, which is the user that does the data entry. The second part of it would be somebody else that has to go approve it. So I'm logged in under a different user, different tab, and this is our approvals and declines dashboard. And we got a few things in here. You see journal entries, AP bills, purchasing. So these are some of the various records that this person has to approve. You got some links here for additional drill downs, and then some check boxes here to select of what you want to do with this. So anything that you have in your approval queue, you've got 3 options here, and with our 3 buttons. So approve, decline, and delegate. So approve and decline, hopefully self-explanatory. Delegate, we click on that. We can select from other users in here. And that means that if you select someone, put a note, hit OK, takes it out of your approval queue and gives it to someone else. One of the other cool things that we do with our approvals module is when you have the employees listed here, it's not actually all the employees. We do a filter check. So it's only the employees that have access to the same or more entities that you have access to. So that way we can try to avoid a situation where you go delegate to someone that can't even see the transaction in the first place. Okay, so that's it for the day-to-day processing, both from the submitter and then the approval side. The person doing the approving, we also have email notifications. And so we actually have 3 types of email notifications. One is that somebody else submitted something and you have to go approve it. So that tells you got to go in here and approve it, or you can approve it directly off of the email also. You got a couple options there. And then if you're the one that submits something, you'll get one of 2 email notifications that either it was approved or that it was declined. So we do have email notifications as part of the module. Okay, so next up, let's take a look at what our different rules look like. And under our workflow builder, so advanced approvals is our main module. We got workflow builder as one of the options here. And we're going to go to purchasing. And then our transaction definition of purchase order. And you can see we've got a couple different rules here for departments and channels. So I'm going to flip over to another tab. We're going to look at the transaction, sample transaction, as we'll walk through it, which has 2 different lines on it. And you'll notice that there's a department 300 here and 2 channels, residential, commercial. And we want different approval rules for each of those channels. So this will be another place where we differentiate from Native Intact, in that Native Intact allows you to have, department manager approval or project manager approval, but they require you to have the same department on all the lines or the same project on all the lines. In our application, we don't have that restriction, in that we do what we call line level approvals. Native Intact would do transaction level approvals where the entire transaction goes through the approval process. We're able to split it out by lines. And so in this case, we got 2 different lines going through 2 different rules. We'll go check that out. So our approval rule here, we're going to hit edit. And it's a few things that we have up on the top, one of which is entity. If we hit this pick list, click on here, you'll notice that we have the ability to assign this to multiple entities specifically for their use. If we leave it blank, then it applies to all entities. We also have expiration rules to auto approve or auto decline, or we can include a delegate. So what that means is after, let's say 2 days or 10 days, whatever you want in the approval queue, we can do one of 3 things. We can automatically approve it, automatically decline it, or automatically delegate it to someone else. Where our goal is that we don't leave anything stuck in the approval step where no one knows the status and it feels like it's in the abyss. We have the expiration rule. After X number of days, we move this thing along and again, either auto approve, decline, or delegate it to someone else. So then in the middle section of our rule, we have our filtering logic. You'll notice that in this case, we had department 300, channel 100, and our other rule is channel 200. If we go and look at our approvals here, and we see that for PO 55, we have department 300, channel 200. We're approving the $200 line. And then on this tab, I'm logged in as another user for PO 55. The rule was 300, channel 100 for $100. And that is in this approval queue. So each person is approving just the lines that are assigned to them. Because again, we're splitting out that transaction. All right, and oops. Okay, so as we're here, where we have our different objects, if we hit this pick list, you see we've got header, detail lines, and departments. And this applies to the various transactions. So if you have approvals for journal entries or approvals for AP bills, it'll be the same concept where you got header, detail lines, and then all the different dimensions. And so again, if we say header, and we look back on our transaction, it's all the fields that are on the header can be included in our filtering logic. And I keep clicking on the wrong tab. Okay, and then if we hit this pick list here, it's every single field in Intact that's exposed on the header, including custom fields, including fields you probably didn't even realize were there because it's a lot. And then if you choose detail and we click on that, then it's every single field It's on the detail lines of the transactions. And beyond that, then you've got all the different dimensions. If we, let's say we pick off like project and hit this pick list, and we're going to see project type equals ABC. All right, so now in this case, you might have 20 different projects that all have a project type of ABC. Well, we're going to be able to look at each line of a transaction, look at the project type, and incorporate that into the rule for the approvals. And if we add additional lines in here, you'll notice that we have our filter expression growing. So we've got line 1, 2, and 3. And so we've got 1 and 2 and 3. Now we can also have OR up here. And so now you have ands, ors, parentheses. So now you have like full algebraic orders of operation of how you want to structure the filtering. So you can get pretty sophisticated with that. If we scroll down to the bottom, we've got the actual approval list. We've got named users. So we can put in named users here. And so in this case, like all three people would get this sent to their approval queue. And then we can do something like this, where 2 out of the 3 have to approve it. We've got user groups. So if you all have users assigned to groups, this is really helpful. If you have turnover, then all you need to do is take people in and out of groups. You don't have to worry about them but going into each individual rule and seeing if that person's assigned there. You just take them in and out of the group. And then for linked employees, these are the different dimension managers. So department manager, managers manager, location manager, project manager, submitting employees manager. So try to make that a little dynamic there. Okay, we'll go back to here, and then we'll finish off just real quick with an explanation then of specifically how this would work. Let's say that you had an AP bill or journal entry or purchase order or whatever with 20 lines on it. You might have 50 different rules. I say that because I think we've got 3 customers now that have at least 100 rules for AP bills. So that's not an exaggeration. So let's say you got 50 rules in this case for purchasing. You got a 20-line purchase order. The process will be very methodical in that we take line 1 of the purchase order and we evaluate the first rule. If it gets caught there, then we stop. If not, we go to line 2, gets caught there, stop. And we keep looping through it until that line 1 of the purchase order gets caught by one of these rules. Once it gets caught, then we go to line 2 of the purchase order and we start all over again. Evaluate the first rule. If it gets caught there, we stop. If not, go to the next one, etc. Okay, by the time you finish looping through everything and you evaluate all the lines on the purchase order, then you'll see that the first rule might have 6 of the lines. Next rule will have 3 of the lines. Next rule will have 5 lines, whatever it is. And then you've got these groups of lines, and each of the rules has approvers tied to them. And so at that point, we distribute out the groups of lines to the different approvers, and each approver is not approving the whole transaction. Instead, they're approving just the groups of lines that are associated to them. And then we have code that runs in the background that once all the lines are approved, then the entire transaction is approved. Okay, and I think we're running out of time, so I am going to stop here. And I believe that we have another polling question. And Baron, are you there with the polling question?
Yep. Thanks, Tom. Didn't see any questions pop up on that one. Appreciate it. I know it's a functionality that a lot of our home services customers are adopting, and I would say the 2 areas that I'm seeing the most specifically have been journal entries and vendors, and it's also expanding into the AP side on bills and payments as well. But if I was to kind of rank the usage on home services, it's journal entries, vendors, AP payments, and bills. So as kind of you're doing approvals, and if you're involved in the approval process and there's a lot of work that's being done outside of Sage Intacct, this is a great opportunity to keep things in the system automated, not worrying about the manual workflows. And I know we got a minute left, and I've kind of picked up the questions as they come through the webinar. But if you have anything else, feel free to drop in the Q&A. And if you have a hard stop, feel free to drop, and appreciate everyone's joining the call, and we'll have this webinar available in our help center as well. So if you had any team members that weren't able to make it, you can let them know that it will be available in our help center. And thanks, everyone. Appreciate the time. Have a good one.